The worst possible elevator pitch for why Western civilization should go on. This is the Daniel Natal Show. During this contentious election cycle, we've been told over and over again that to question the results is a danger to our democracy. We've heard various permutations of this over the last week, such as Trump is the worst threat to democracy since the 1930s, or don't underestimate the threat to American democracy at this moment, or election cliffhanger captivates the world, prompts fears of fate of U.S. democracy. Against the backdrop of current events, it might be good to examine what's going on a systemic level. In antiquity, people understood that all systems break down. Everything is subject to entropy. In classical political science, Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, etc., they talk about how there are three main forms of government, namely monarchy, aristocracy, and republic. And these three forms have three corrupt forms that they turn into, namely tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. What's interesting is that Aristotle, in Politics, he describes what a democracy is, and it sounds suspiciously similar to what we today call a socialist state. He says that in a democracy, demagogues will rise up and will stir hatred of the rich, and they'll start to promise the people free food, free housing, free healthcare to bribe their way into power. And they will often use the term equality as their watchword. And he actually says this, Aristotle makes a great point of this, that every government has a different end goal. The end goal of an oligarchy, as an example, is to transfer the wealth of the many to the few. The end goal of a republic is to promote the virtue of the people. Whereas the end goal of a democracy, he says, is equality. You'll constantly hear in a democracy, equality, equality, equality. And this usually leads to a breakdown in the society as politicians bribe their way into power by offering free stuff and transferring the wealth of, the hated rich down to the poor people. And this is actually something that's also touched upon by Alexander Fraser Tytler. And he famously says, "A democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until that time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which always is followed by a dictatorship." Before a republic degrades into a democracy, it might be instructive to understand how republics form in the first place. According to Aristotle, most republics form in agrarian societies and highly decentralized civilizations that are usually run by farmers. The Roman Republic is a prominent example. Thomas Madden in Empires of Trust says on page 14 as an example, "Although Rome was not far from the sea, the early Romans had no real navy, focusing instead on the rich soils of Latium." He adds on page 39, "The early Romans were farmers living in a frontier world in which each family looked after its own interests and well-being. Cato the Elder said that the highest compliment that could be paid to a Roman was not that he was wealthy or had high status, but simply that he was a good husbandman, a good farmer." It goes without saying that, like the Roman Republic, the American Republic happened at a time when most of the population were farmers. 91% of the populace at that time period were in farming or in sectors related to farming in some way. Most of the founding fathers were gentlemen farmers, and this conduced to a highly decentralized society, which led to a highly decentralized form of government. Aristotle says in Politics as an example, "Now there are two causes which occasion there being so many republics, one of which is that which we have already mentioned, namely, there being different sorts of people, for in one country the majority are husbandmen." Of course, a husbandman is the old term for a farmer, and back in 1776, as I said, about 91% of the population were farmers, so it conduced to a highly decentralized society where everybody kind of took care of their own homestead, everybody made their own clothes, grew their own food, they were very independent, and this led to a very independent government, a very independent spirit in the society. But as we transitioned from an agrarian society to a highly industrialized society, we lost a lot of that, as 91% of the populace went from farmers to less than 1% today. And this had a lot of sociological ramifications. We went from a republic, and now there were pressures for the highly centralized society that conduces to a socialist state, or what Aristotle would call a democracy. By the way, this is why the Founding Fathers roundly denounced democracy, because for them it was their word for a socialist state. And in fact, this is what they were denouncing when they looked at the French Revolution, and Robespierre and the Jacobins were killing the rich, and they were destroying all the institutions inside France. And in fact, the Bolsheviks would later in the Soviet Union put their first statue up of Robespierre and said that he was the founding father of the Bolshevik movement. He was a proto-Bolshevik, they said. And so the founding fathers of our country agreed with that. And so today we have a lot of what you might look at as modern Jacobins, tearing down the institutions of our society and attacking a lot of the governmental institutions as well. Joe Biden, as an example, wants to pack the Supreme Court. He wants to change its ideological balance so that he can, manipulate the outcome of events. And it remains to be seen if the Supreme Court will hear the election disputes and if they will see Joe Biden as a threat to their political power. Because now, they are wondering, what are going to be the results of allowing, let's just say, voter irregularities to help Joe Biden get in, and what will that mean to the court? Will the court side with President Trump and want to look more deeply into what's going on in a lot of these swing states, or will we allow entropy to carry us forward and lose our republic as we transition into a democracy? And this is one of the things that when the Democrats say that Trump is a threat to our democracy, they're actually being accurate, because Trump represents a perpetuation of the republic, and he's trying to stave off the decay that would lead to an actual democracy. So we will be keeping abreast of these developments here on the Daniel Natal Show. People fear any political leader who has his finger on the red button. What political leaders fear is people having their finger on the red button, the subscribe button. Push it and see their narratives explode. Also consider donating to help keep these videos coming. And don't forget our website and newsletter, thenewamerican.com.